Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I sat down with Jill Martindale, who recently just finished the 1000 version of the Iditarod Trail Invitational. If you're new to the Iditarod Trail Invitational, basically it spans from Anchorage, or just outside of Anchorage, all the way to Nome, Alaska. There's a 1,000 mile version and a 350 mile version. Personally, I've done the 350 mile version a few times, but the sheer undertaking and remoteness and difficulty to prepare for the 1,000 mile version has kept me from doing it. So I really wanted to chat with Jill, who recently actually won alongside Peter Ineman and Casey Fagerquist. Those three crossed the finish line in 22 days, 7 hours, and 30 minutes, which is a long time, but as she mentions in this interview, there's a ton of variables that go into riding and racing 1,000 miles on snow. So we'll get into that. I just wanted to obviously thank her for the wonderful happy hour we had, but also just to congratulate all the racers, especially Peter and Casey. And then obviously the 350 riders as well. It's a big undertaking to take on. And so, without further ado, here is our interview with Jill Martindale.
What are you drinking? Is that a Founders?
I'm drinking Centennial IPA from Founders.
Hell yeah, Founders.
This is like the best bang for your buck. When there's an apocalypse, you just get a lot of these, the 18 packs. What are you drinking?
I have the Black Rocks Honey Lavender.
Is that what style is that?
A little honey lavender one.
Oh, honey lavender. Yeah, I haven't had that one actually.
It's good. It's not as high of a percentage as what you're drinking.
Yeah. So Jill, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? How did cycling become such a big part of your life? And why are you enamored by all of these winter ultras?
So I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I started doing winter ultras after a couple of years of racing my fat bike. I love being on the bike all day long. Some of my favorite memories were like riding my bike around Lake Superior, going on multi-day kind of trips. And I started doing fat bike races in really crappy conditions where you're pushing your bike and you're just kind of on the bike all day long. And you finish like 6 hours later and you've only gone like 30 miles. But I loved it. And then I heard of winter ultras and I thought, it sounds like my two favorite things, camping and fat bike riding. And it was also easy. I was working at a bike shop at the time, and the winter season is the slow season. So if I wanted to take extra time off of work, it was easier to do that in the winter. So it just kind of all meshed together really well. And I just love it. I love the snow. I love how the snow changes and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So. Just to back up, we'll talk plenty of snow conditions and winter ultras. But when did you ride around Lake Superior?
That was 2012.
Okay.
I did that.
And just like bike packing, or were you like jumping from hotels, or?
It was bike packing.
Yeah.
So I did Lake Michigan in 2011, and then
oh, cool.
And then got a Salsa Via because the Fuji like world tour that I did Lake Michigan around really just wasn't comfortable and didn't carry my stuff well.
Yeah.
So I got the Salsa Via, a couple buds, and we just packed up like a 4-person tent, and there were 3 of us that kind of started, and then one girl had to bail out in Duluth. So then there was just 2 of us with this really heavy 4-person tent, and we went in September, so it was just kind of crappy weather, and it rained a lot. But it was really fun. Nice. So we just kind of rode as far as we could, and then camped, and then rode as far as we could. And it took us 18 days to do Lake Superior. 18.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, we could have gone faster.
Yeah.
But it was really fun to like stop and find nice places to camp and all that good stuff.
Awesome. And then, so I guess when, fast forwarding now, when was your first winter ultra?
The Tuscobia winter ultra was my first one, and that was in the winter December of 2014. And that was my first winter ultra. And then as soon as I finished that is when I decided that I wanted to do the Iditarod Trail Invitational. Even though I cried out on the trail, and it was like really miserable. As soon as I finished, I was just kind of like, I'm going to Alaska.
Yeah.
Like,
So that was 2014,
Mm-hmm.
and you knew you wanted Alaska. You knew that your sights were set on that. And you did ITI in 2018 then, right?
Yep, I did the 350 in 2018.
Okay.
Um,
So I think that kind of just goes to show like the viewers that it takes such a long time to mentally prepare and physically prepare for an event like this.
I think I technically could have done the 1,000-mile ITI like last year. Like I had enough qualifying races for it, but I just wasn't like mentally prepared. And I wanted to spend, the extra winter just kind of dialing in my gear and dialing in technique and making sure that I was comfortable melting snow with my camp stove and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a big part, because when at least for like Arrowhead and Tuscobia and even like the Fat Pursuit, they're kind of day races to a point, you could probably get through those races without having to boil water and all that stuff. So like really, bringing that stuff along those races, and I know you brought that stuff along to Scobia this year, and just like having that mindset is such a different mindset that I would have, say, racing like Arrowhead or something like that. How, I guess, like what's like a trick that you use preparing like mentally, or is there a trick?
I think the biggest thing that helped me, especially this year, was riding my bike on really crappy days here in Michigan. Just like riding in the snow, riding, when it's mushy, riding in the rain, and just having like a stockpile of like memories that I've done this before. So even though it was raining and snowy and windy and just like soft conditions out there on the trail, I had fun memories of like a group ride in the same conditions. And so I would just kind of call them that and be like, I survived it for 3 hours before, so I can do this 19-hour push. And I also have a bunch of like just random sayings. So like before the race, I spoke with Alexandra Huchen on the phone, and she wished me good luck. And she told me, remember, you've wanted this for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So on like really crappy days, when you're ready to throw in the towel, I just kind of pulled that little saying out and just remember, I wanted this.
Yeah.
Pain for this. And then it kind of gives you a little bit more oomph to just keep going.
Right. That's super impressive. That's, yeah. Cool. So I guess going back to the 2018 ITI experience, how did you do? Like, how did you feel after finishing that race?
I felt pretty horrible after finishing. So essentially, I pushed myself really hard. I didn't get enough rest. I didn't stay in checkpoints long enough. So like when I would stop somewhere, my gloves would be wet and I would try to just rush in and rush out. Mm-hmm. I was also vegetarian in 2018. And when you roll into the checkpoints, they have like a burger. So I wound up relying on my own like kind of snack bars, my own food. And this time around, I actually started eating meat. So I was a lot more full this time around. One of the things that I said after 2018 was like, I've never been that hungry before on my bike. And I think I put myself kind of in a hole a little bit. And I think I rode slower because of it, just because I wasn't resting. I wasn't eating enough, or I wasn't eating enough of the right foods. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was good. But I remember I called the swamp before Nikolai. I just kept referring to it as like the swamp of despair.
Yeah.
And it just kept going and going. And I was so miserable and so sad in 2018. So spending that time, like kind of knowing what was in store, I felt like the first 350 miles, even though I was out there a day longer this year, I felt like everything was a lot shorter or more manageable, and I think it's because I knew mentally what was coming.
Yep.
So like, yeah, the swamp before Nikolai was a lot more rideable this year, and I wasn't as miserable because I knew there was an end.
Yep.
And like going through Rainy Pass, I knew if I could just like push up and push through the wind, I knew like once you get to the top, it's so much fun headed into Rome, and it's so sleepy and awesome. So I just kept looking forward to that, which made it a little bit better.
So you're vegetarian, or you were a vegetarian, and then you started eating meat again, and just for the race?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's impressive. That's dedication right there.
Yeah. I thought for sure, like, oh yeah, no, vegetarians can totally do this race. But there were so many times that we would roll into like an Iditarod checkpoint this year, and all they would have is like a big pot of like moose stew.
Yeah.
And turns out I love moose.
What does it taste like? Is it like gamey, or is it like elk?
I thought it was like I thought it was better than venison and better than caribou. I thought it reminded me of like steak a little bit. It's really like melts in your mouth, kind of really tender. I don't know. It was good. Maybe it was just the soup and the fact that I had been riding for so long, and just having something warm to eat was really good. I just wanted to be able to eat anything and everything that was offered to me out there.
Yeah.
And it became like a human garbage disposal.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good.
Right. And are you going to continue to eat meat, or?
I am.
You are.
If me from like 5 years ago could talk to me right now, I'd be so mad at myself.
Yeah, right. So let's go to the start of the race this year. I'm sure, I know in past years everybody's looking at weather. They're like, oh, like what's going to happen? But this year, I don't know if it was just me being an outsider, but it seemed like the weather report was kind of inaccurate. Were you expecting that much snow at the start of the race?
At first, I think like a week out or a couple days out, I wasn't expecting that much. But then the weather forecast the day before, and just hearing everybody talk about how much snow we were getting, I was kind of like, oh crap, we're gonna get some snow.
Yeah.
But I didn't really expect. Like I knew it was gonna be soft, but I thought that the trail maybe had a firmer base than it had. So I didn't expect it to be as much pushing as it was. Because I could kind of ride at the beginning, and then you could ride the road segment, but then it just turned into like just such slop that was unrideable. So we pushed a lot.
Yeah.
I actually wound up bivvying out with Missy Missy Schwartz and Jamie Hollingsworth. We wound up bivvying out before the Yetna River even. So we only made it 35 miles that first day, which was pretty, like it was not as far as I thought I was going to make it. So that was pretty wild. My goal was to make it all the way to Finger Lake before bivying out. So I was pretty short of that. Mm-hmm. But then when we woke up in the morning and packed our bikes up and started riding, there was like a camp of like 15 other people that had bivvied out before the river, like just like maybe half a mile past us. There was this huge group. We were like, holy cow. So it wasn't just us. And then it was a lot of pushing until we got to Yetna. So that was pretty wild.
And Yetna Station, how far is that in again?
I want to say...
Is that 60 miles?
Yeah, Yetna is only 60 miles in.
So it took you how many days to get to Yetna?
I got to Yetna on the second day.
Second day.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh. I know, because I was just looking at the tracker and I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the leaders and I was looking at everybody, and it was slow, and I was just kind of shocked that it was that slow.
It was so much slower. Like my goal when I went out for the 1,000-mile, the women's course record was 17 days.
Yep.
And so my goal was 16.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was just kind of like, day 16 rolled around and I was still like so far out on the trail. I was just kind of like, oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you like overpacked at the start of the race, but like for food and water, did you find yourself in like a tough spot being not bringing enough food or having enough water because your checkpoints were the same distance apart, but a lot further in time apart?
It wasn't until after McGrath, um, but the cripple checkpoint, uh, I was mm, I was thinking the wrong thing. So essentially, I thought the Cripple checkpoint was going to be at one place, the village of Cripple.
Mm-hmm.
But the Cripple checkpoint is actually, it's named after this place that doesn't exist anymore, but it's 20 miles further down the trail.
Oh.
So we were all expecting the Cripple checkpoint to be like 20 miles closer to us, and it wasn't. So I wound up coming really close to running out of food. I only had 600 calories left by the time I like made it to a shelter cabin and stopped. So I slept twice between Ophir and the Cripple checkpoint, which is about like a 90-mile stretch. And I was only expecting to sleep once. So I made my second sleep basically a nap. I just slept for like 2 hours and then got up and kept pushing because I didn't know how far it was going to be. Right. But then the Cripple checkpoint was just like a couple miles past the shelter cabin. But I wound up, there was just a guy out there riding from like just a chunk of the trail. His name is Kurt. And so I wound up trading a Snickers bar for some moose sausage.
Nice. Wait, you traded your Snickers bar for his moose sausage?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good trade. I was really happy about it.
That's a solid trade.
So we made it to the Cripple checkpoint. And at that point, we weren't, Peter, Casey, and I weren't really riding together. So Casey had ridden ahead when I stopped to nap. So he had already been to the Cripple checkpoint. And Peter was just behind me. He was taking a longer break at the cabin. But yeah, I totally thought I was going to run out of food. And that was a scary kind of situation. Mm-hmm. So after that scenario, I started carrying just a lot more extra food on me. So when I made it to Cripple, Casey had left some of the food that he had packed in his drop bag, and I just kind of grabbed it right up, which is really funny because like a week later, Casey was like, "Oh, I wish I had some butter." Yeah. Stick of butter that he had left in Cripple.
Oh, nice. Did you give him some?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Nice.
So we started raiding other people's drop bags once we heard that they had scratched, and then just carrying a bunch of extra food because we knew it was going to be a slog.
Yeah. I guess as far as like checkpoints are concerned, did you find yourself just compared to like 2018, even just in the first 300 or so miles, staying at the checkpoint a lot longer to dry things out and to just kind of take care of yourself?
Yeah. Since the race was so much longer than 2018, I really wanted to make sure that I felt rested and that my gear was dry. So my 3 rules for every checkpoint were dry your gear, eat whatever food they have. Mm-hmm. You can't leave until you go to the bathroom.
Hydrate. That's a good idea.
So I was just like chugging beverages and eating everything. I had 2 double cheeseburgers in Nikolai, and I don't think I've ever put that much food in my stomach before, but I didn't even feel like I was that full when I finished. So I became like just an eating machine. Yeah.
Well, that's what it's all about. Ride your bike and eat. There's a finish in McGrath. Can you explain that experience of getting there, even though you still had to continue on? But what is that place all about?
Tracy and Peter have a place which is like your grandparents' house on like steroids. It's amazing. Peter makes these things that he calls man cakes, and they're like pancakes like the size of your face, and they kind of have like an eggier texture than normal pancakes, and there's a bunch of blueberries in them, and they have whipped cream and just like fruit that you can pile on, and a bunch of maple syrup, and a bunch of butter. And then they also whip out just like omelets, Tracy made these like, I don't know, she made these like chicken wings that were really good, and then she had like a tomato-y rice and salad, and they just whip out mad food. But they also have bathrooms and showers that you can use. I mailed a drop box to McGrath, so I had extra snacks and extra food there. But they just take care of you, and it's this warm place where you can just, everybody just sits around the table, kind of talking and comparing ride stories and talking about the different sections of trail. And it's just a really good place where everybody starts to bond and kind of hang out. We stayed there, we all stayed there for 2 nights before we moved on. We were waiting for the trail breakers to break a trail from McGrath to Cripple. So there had been so much snow that there just wasn't any traffic on the trail. So we had to wait for the snow machines to kind of pave the way for us.
At what point, I guess, did you hadn't seen the dogs then yet, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
Cool. So I guess I've never been past McGrath. So give us some clarity to the average Joe. Like after you leave McGrath, what is the ITI all about? Like how many checkpoints are there? How remote is it? Like what can someone expect to see along the way?
Yeah, so I was thinking that the trail would be a little bit more similar to like the section around Rome, just kind of a little bit swoopier, kind of further away from people. But it was actually a lot more further away from people than I expected. But it was really beautiful. So the section from McGrath to Ophir was a lot like that swoopy Rome section, just kind of rolling hills, really pretty scenery, big trees covered in snow. It was a bluebird day, so that was a really good ride. So you pass through Takatna first, which is just a really small little village, and they had a community center where they were grilling burgers. I fell behind Peter, Casey, and then Juicy K was riding with them at that time. I fell behind them because I was having some knee issues in McGrath. But I wound up catching them at the community center, and they had all gotten cheeseburgers there. So I got a cheeseburger and then continued on the way. But everything past McGrath is just like a lot more, it's a lot more wild. You're further away from people. You don't see houses on the side of the trail at all. You don't see cabins really aside from the shelter cabins. And when you get to the villages, they're just way smaller. So like when you roll through like Squetna or Figure Lake, or the Pintillo Lodge even, there's this feeling that it's a little bit more touristy.
Yeah.
But when you get further, everything is just a lot smaller, a lot more remote, not decorated as nice. The buildings in the villages are a little bit more rundown. And you get to these buildings and they don't have electricity, or the bathrooms even, like you couldn't flush toilet paper in places where there was running water.
Wow.
So everything, like the plumbing was a little bit more, I don't know.
Rough around the edges.
Yeah, not a lot of electricity. You would roll into a house and they wouldn't have running water. They wouldn't have electricity. So it was just a lot more remote, a lot further away, and then not a lot of stores either.
Yeah, that's crazy. And these communities, they thrive off, especially in the winter. They thrive off people coming through, especially the ITI racers, and then the dog sledders. But there wasn't very many people this year. After you guys, that was basically it, really.
Yeah, and they actually were shutting down the villages because of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
So, like when we got to Nulato, which is one of the checkpoints before the coast, they didn't want us to come into the village at all. So we were supposed to stay in the school at Nulato and pay like $50 per person to stay the night.
Yeah.
Instead, we stayed on the river with the Iditarod checkpoint, and they put us up in one of their wall tents where they usually take care of sick dogs.
Oh my gosh, really? So yeah, that's crazy. So you're dealing with, when you started the race, there wasn't, I mean, for the most part, we weren't thinking that this was going to be this crazy pandemic that it has turned into as we are recording this on the end of March, but it did. So what were you thinking, like anything during your time riding, or were people saying anything? I know just following social media, there was a lot of commentators out there expressing their concerns and whatnot. So yeah, like what were you guys thinking out there?
It was, it wasn't until we got to Ruby, which is one of the villages before the coast, that we realized like how serious the whole thing was. Like in McGrath, there was some talk about it, but it was just kind of like, oh, everybody's getting sick. We're up here. Good thing we're up here. And then we got to Ruby, and we heard that the villages didn't want like the media from the Iditarod coming into the villages, just because they didn't want to get sick. And then the next village that we came to, Galena, Larry, the host at the Airbnb where we stayed, not Airbnb, the bed and breakfast, sorry. Larry was telling us about how like Tom Hanks and Tom Hanks's wife got the coronavirus, and how like the NBA had been shut down. We were just kind of like, oh, weird. And then we kind of skipped Koyukuk. You kind of skip it because you take the river. And then we got to Mulatto and found out that we weren't allowed inside. And so we kind of had like that, oh crap feeling. The Caltech school, which is the next village, they let the three of us in, but then they didn't let anybody else in after us.
Okay.
So it was, we felt really lucky that way. And then rolling into Unalakleet, which is the first village on the coast, we had kind of heard that the villages didn't want us in anymore. So Casey and I kind of got into our heads, and we thought maybe Katie was going to be in Unalakleet and tell us that we couldn't do this anymore and pull us off the course. So I cried on the way to Unalakleet because I thought the race was over. And then we got there and found out that it was still on.
Yeah, because we kept hearing about all that too. Like, oh, is the race going to end? Is Katie going to just say, we've got to stop, we have to get all the athletes home, or what? But yeah, I'm really happy it didn't end there. I'm happy. I mean, you guys were you were so close anyways, right?
Yeah. So then we rode to Shaktoolik. And got there, and we were supposed to have a nice place to rest there, but didn't. So that Iditarod checkpoint again adopted us and let us in.
Cool.
And then we made it across the sea ice to Koyuk, and then from Koyuk to Elam, we were able to go. And by the time we hit Elam, we heard that the sea ice had broken up because of the storm surge. So everybody that was on course behind us got pulled because there was no physical way to get across that sea ice, or there wasn't an overland route or anything like that. So we felt really lucky that we were in Elam. But then we heard that the mushers were having some problems with overflow. So 2 mushers actually had to get saved by like a helicopter because they were in overflow, like up to their armpits.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was like, it was like a big holy shit moment. And we were staying at the Iditarod checkpoint, so we were talking with the mushers, and the mushers didn't know if they were going to get pulled from the course, and then we didn't know if we were going to get pulled from the course. And then we waited for the trailbreakers. So we spent the night in Elam, and the trailbreakers left at 8 a.m. And then all the 11 sled teams went off, and then we took off after the sled teams. And as we're climbing Little McKinley, and the trail is super soft, so we're just pushing and it's time. We kept hearing dogs like barking and whining. We were like, what the heck is going on? And it wasn't until we got to the peak that we saw like this huge long line of sled teams, like all the way from the very top, like just kind of winding down to where we were. And turns out just after the trailbreakers had gone through, it was so windy and snowy that the markers just got covered. They lost the trail. So we waited on top of the mountain with like 11 sled teams and like 4 snow machines. And then we all turned around and went back to Elam. So they were going to send some trailbreakers out again the next morning. And at that time, we had been on the phone with Katie and Kyle. And Katie was like looking to flights home, like race is over, come on home. So we were really sad, and we were like, we can't argue with her. She's the race director. We have to respect her. And then Kyle was like, get out of there. Keep riding.
Yeah, just go. Yeah, Kyle.
We're going with Kyle.
Yeah, at least one of them saying go. They're just covering their asses, each of them.
Yeah. So we were like, get out of here. So the trail breakers left at 5 a.m. and then the sled teams followed, and then we followed the sled teams again.
Oh my gosh.
And when we got up on top of one of the peaks again, so we made it past we made it further than we did the day before. But then when we got on top of one of the peaks, it was like a whiteout conditions.
Yep.
And since it was a new overland route, they didn't have as many lays as like the normal trail. So we were following like smears of dog poop and dog pee to like get down from there because we couldn't see the lays and we couldn't find the trail.
Just following poop.
Just follow the
trail
poop.
Markers.
Yeah. So we'd see like one lay, and like Casey would wait there, and Peter and I would move forward, and then you would see like a smear of poo, and I would wait there, and Peter would continue forward. Then Peter would finally find something else, and I'd wave to Casey, and then the three of us just kind of kept moving forward like that.
That's awesome. Wow. So just talking about Peter and Casey real quick, when did you start riding with both of them together, I guess, and how was having that company out there?
I think it was really, it made the whole situation really unique and really a lot more fun, like mentally able to kind of handle everything that was going on. So we were all in McGrath at the same time, and we all took off at the same time. It was after the trail breakers. So like we couldn't really leave earlier.
Yeah.
So we started kind of riding, and they pulled ahead of me after Takatna, but then they stopped to sleep in Ophir. So then I caught up with them a couple hours later and stopped to sleep there too. And then we all kind of left Ophir together, but Casey got further ahead and then Peter got further ahead. But then they stopped at the Takatna cabin, and then I caught up with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Casey left first, and then he went through Cripple, and then I left, and Peter left a couple hours later. So we were all through Cripple at different times. But then Casey stopped to sleep in Ruby, and then Peter stopped to sleep in Ruby, and then I stopped to sleep in Ruby. And then in the morning, we all left at the same time. So it just kind of naturally happened because of the conditions. And then Casey got to Galena first, and then Peter and I got to Galena. And at that point, we were all kind of like, well, the snow's kind of soft. We might as well just like work together, start breaking trail together. And then once we got to Caltag and heard that the villages on the coast weren't going to be super stoked to have us there, then we were like, well, the snow is soft, so we're not moving that fast anyways. We can work together and break trail, but also our chances of like finding a place to stay are probably a lot better if we're together. Just because like the Iditarod kind of took pity on us and let us in the spots. Or like in Gullivan, we kind of worked together we just found this guy riding a four-wheeler around and asked him if there was a spot where we could stay, and he took pity on us and found us a cabin to rent.
Awesome.
But then also the shelter cabins that we stayed at, like having the three of us to kind of chop wood or saw wood and heat up and warm up and dry out all of our stuff. Like there was kind of a select places for us to stay. So yeah, we all just kind of naturally started riding together or pushing together, I guess you could call it.
Yep.
And then we all kind of got along really well and had a fun time riding together. They're my snacks. I think that's why they kept me around.
Yeah.
But we were getting messages from people telling us to like make a break for it, like get out of there.
Right. Yeah, I bet.
But it was just kind of like Casey said it best. I think one of the nights he was like, I leave earlier and I push really hard and I work really hard, And then you guys just roll into the same checkpoint hours later. It's like, what's the point? Like, you guys are always going to be where I'm at. And then after everything going on, in Golovin, when we were in the cabin, we were all just kind of eating dinner and talking about other stuff. And Peter was like, so how are we going to do this?
Yep.
He's like, are we all on our own after this point? And from Golovin to White Mountains, it was just all pushing anyways. So it's not like we were able to ride that because it was more overland route, more new trail. But yeah, so Peter was just kind of, he was the first to say, are we going to finish this together or are we all out on our own? And at that point, we had just spent so much time together that it just made sense to do it together.
That's really special.
Yeah, it was really, we had fun. I mean, it was really crappy weather. The worst day ever was riding the Top Cock Hills just before, it was like 20 miles before safety, 40 miles to finish.
Okay.
So it was the last cabin that we stayed in. But it was just like, it was cold and we were getting rained on and it was like 40 to 50 mile wind gusts. And it was like a lot of like snow mixed with rain.
Yeah.
And just a lot of climbing. So it was like hill after hill after hill. And the last hill was over a mile long of just like unrideable snow that you're pushing. And it sucked really bad. So Casey was out ahead. I could barely see his light. And then Peter was behind me. And we're all just like yelling and swearing into the wind. And like, just like so angry. And like Casey was just like trying his fastest to get to the cabin to get a fire started. Like Casey told me later he was really worried about us. He's like, I thought we were gonna get hypothermia. Like it was horrible. That was a 19-hour push from Elam.
Wow.
Or sorry, from Golovin to the cabin. It was just like a 40-mile stretch, but it took us 19 hours. It was horrible. But Peter caught up to me and he was like, how are you doing? It's just like, whoosh, 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 like horrible out. And I just looked at him and I was like, I'm broken. Like, I can't, I'm so sad right now. I was like, this is the worst.
And you're so close.
I know.
But you know that it's just actually kind of far away still.
Yeah, we were still another day away or whatever. But Peter was just kind of like, just keep going. He's like, you can't stop. It's too wet. You got to keep going. I was like, I know. This sucks. Laugh. Like, frig this. Just like so mad. And then you get to the top of that hill that lasted forever. And there's just like super fun rip-in descent. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking like, I'm so sad that my arms feel like noodles right now. I'm like so sad that I'm so wet and cold because it would normally otherwise be like a really fun descent. But I was like so beat up that I couldn't even appreciate it. And then we get to the shelter cabin and it just like looks kind of crumbly and falling apart from the outside. But the inside was like, it was the first shelter cabin that we got to that was stocked with wood. And it was like super stocked with wood.
Nice.
And Casey had gotten there and he was starting to make a fire. So we like heated it up to like 90 degrees inside of that thing.
Yeah.
It was so hot.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a great feeling, I'm sure. And drawing things out quickly.
We were so relieved because like if we had gotten there and there was no wood there, like I was mentally preparing myself to just like strip out of all my wet clothes. So I have like what I call an oh shit pile. Mm-hmm. And it's like when shit hits the fan, like I have this pile of like, I had a long sleeve base layer, a pair of gloves, a hat, like a wool bottom base layer, and a clean pair of socks. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking like when we get to the Toki cabin, I'm going to have to pull out my oh shit pile. It's like the pile in case you like fall through the ice and get completely drenched or something like that, you know, just a warm pile of clothes to put on. And I was definitely like, I need to get into that. Like, this is my oh shit moment.
Yeah.
So that was pretty lucky.
That's funny. I'm just stoked for all three of you. I just can't even believe like going through that many days of just hiking and just
we kept we had this running joke that the last 10 miles of every day was the worst. And it was like, it was like the local villagers had like, they were at home watching our trackers, because as soon as we were like 10 miles out of a town, they would send like a couple snow machines at us.
Oh, nice.
Finally be like, ah, cool, we can ride.
Yeah.
This is like 10 miles out. And then all of a sudden they'd be like, zoom, zoom, zoom. And the trail would be like worse than it was all day.
Right. Yeah. I know. It just doesn't set up.
Yeah. Or it was like the Hunger Games almost.
Yeah.
Like as soon as we were through one challenge, they just like threw one that was even worse at us.
Right. Oh, my goodness. Oh, so getting to Nome, how did it feel?
It was, I think, just a big relief. Like we were so close to the finish, and with all the challenges that were thrown at us, and like thinking maybe we weren't going to finish, or with how mushy and like crappy the weather had been, we were finally getting to Nome, and that was rad. And I had thought, like, there were times on the trail that I was like crying because I was so happy to be out there after like all this time. Like I made it through a rainy pass. I made it through like the night that it was like -60 and cripple. Like I made it through all these things. And like anytime I thought about it on the trail, I would just like start to cry. And I thought for sure when I rolled into Nome, I would just be like a big ugly crier, like being really excited. But I didn't. I was like all laughy and smiley and just like super stoked. But a lot of relief that we had made it and that we didn't get pulled from the course. And like really proud of myself because I didn't get any frostbite.
Hell yeah.
And
Two thumbs up for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I was excited that I had been so smart the entire race, and like pretty stoked about it. But it was also weird because like we were expecting that we would ride through like the Burles Arch, or like the entire time Peter was talking about getting a burger at one of the restaurants in town, but everything was just like, it was all shut down.
Yeah.
There were like 3 people that were there. One woman got pictures of us, and that was pretty nice. And then one of Casey's cousins brought us a pizza and some beer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to ask a few quick rapid-fire questions. What was your best checkpoint, Neil?
Ooh. Oh man, I feel like I need to say McGrath because Tracy and Peter are amazing. But also Ophir was pretty good because they fed us king crab. And that was delicious and like totally unexpected.
Yeah.
But also Elam. Like, even though it was like such a crapshoot out of Elam and there was like a roller coaster of emotions, in Elam we got to hang out with the sled dog teams and
Sweet.
the mushers and like really get to know them. And I think getting to know some of the mushers and like the villagers is one of my favorite things about this race. So I really liked that.
Yeah, without them it would be almost impossible.
Top 3 favorite checkpoints.
There we go. All right, what was the best trailside snack that you ate during the whole 1,000 miles?
Ooh.
If you had that one like, this is amazing moment.
I don't know. No, I do know. Joanna and Jack in White Mountains, so they fed us some moose chili.
Yum.
And then Joanna also made this like cranberry cake, which was kind of like a cranberry cinnamony bread with like a cream cheese frosting.
Oof.
I took a square of that when we left.
Yep.
And I ate it, and it was so, like, I ate it in the top cabin when it was like really hot.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could do was just like,
Yeah, exactly. And then when it's over, it's like, oh, why is it over?
I was so spent and so tired, but it made me really happy.
Oh,
So
that's
I
awesome.
got my favorite snack.
What was your high moment then?
Ooh. Riding the Caltag portage, so from Caltag to Unalakleet, that was one of the good days. There was like a blue sky and the trail was perfect, And just getting out of Caltech, there were some really fun kind of rollers and some really fun swoopy snowmobile trails. So that was awesome. And then once you get closer to Unalakleet, it's just kind of, it's a little bit more flat. There's a little bit of like some long rollers, but it was like just a beautiful day, perfect weather, and really fun trail. So we were all just like hammering it out, riding as fast as we could, and just like, I think I got air.
Yeah.
So that was an awesome day. That was really fun.
Awesome. Cool. What was the best conversation on the trail that you had? If you can think of one that stood out, what was it?
So the best conversation we got into was talking about who would play you if they made a movie of the Iditarod Trail Invitational this year. And Casey and Peter, since we kept making Hunger Games references,
Okay.
they thought that Jennifer Lawrence would play me. And then there were a lot of comments about how Jennifer Lawrence is like hot and sexy. So I told Casey that Ryan Gosling would play him, because like Ryan Gosling is my celebrity crush.
Okay. That's awesome.
And then Peter would be who's the character that plays Wolverine?
Oh,
It is Googling it. Hugh Jackman.
yep.
So Hugh Jackman plays Peter. And it's just like Peter was like, he is such a good outdoorsman. Like his bike broke, his hub exploded, and he like this strap to just like tie his cassette onto his spokes so that he could ride a fixed gear for 100 and some miles. So that was pretty epic. But then also like we would roll into a cabin, and there would be no firewood and it would be wet outside, and I would be like, burn the benches, burn everything. And Peter would be like, no. And then he would just like go out and find firewood somehow magically and like bring it into the cabin and just like make a fire really easily.
Awesome.
I don't know. So that was a pretty fun conversation.
Yeah, that's rad. Cool. So what has it been like since you've gotten back home? Like, how has the re-entry into society been going?
I don't think I've re-entered yet.
I guess it's been really quick because you just got home. You were flying for like a day or something like that.
It was weird at the airports because they were so empty.
Mm-hmm.
And the flights didn't have like anything but water. So that was pretty weird. And then since I got home, I kind of got a little bit more caught up on the coronavirus and a little bit more of the seriousness of it. So like a lot of friends have wanted to congratulate me.
Yeah.
We've had a couple people just like stand in the road and yell at the house.
Awesome.
Like have opened the windows and been able to talk to them through that, or like come out into the driveway and they're still on the road. So it's a bummer because I wanted to come home and hug my friends, and I wanted to come home and like go to the grocery store. And I'm on self-quarantine for 2 weeks because I was traveling. And
that's good of you. That's awesome that you're doing that.
Yeah. So I'm going to just stay at home and not go places. But also my job, it has closed down. So right now I have a tentative date to possibly start working again April 14th, but it really depends what the course of this thing takes.
And I guess where do you work?
I work at Velocity USA. So we manufacture bicycle rims, and the factory is closed down. So we're still, there's like the owner of the company is still taking orders. So you can still call and talk to someone about rims, but nothing's getting made and nothing's getting shipped out until at least the 14th.
Okay.
So that was kind of a bummer because I was looking forward to coming home too and just like excitedly going to work and seeing everybody.
Yeah.
And this is really horrible to say, but this is the first time I've ever gotten home from a bike race and I haven't rushed back to work.
Yeah.
So I'm actually like excited to kind of rest up, actually wash my stuff, get my bike back together spend a little bit more time like reflecting about the race, hopefully writing some more stuff down.
Yep.
And it's kind of, I don't know, I went on a long dog walk today. I'm going to go for like a long bike ride tomorrow. So it's just, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird. I talked to my parents. My parents both still have to work. My mom watches mentally disabled adults, and my dad does IT at the hospital. So I'm kind of worried for them.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the Winter Shakedown, and are you doing another one next year?
We are.
Sweet.
Yep. So my husband Dan and I put together the Winter Shakedown, which is kind of like a intro to winter bike packing and winter ultras event in West Michigan here. So we capped it at 30 this past year, and we sold out, which is awesome. But we work on practicing skills that you would see and use in a winter ultra. And then this past year we had Matt Acker talking about winter racing, talking about tire pressure, and we had Chelsea Straight from 45 North talk about 45 North tires and winter apparel and how to layer. And I talked about my prep for the Iditarod Trail Invitational, and also kind of talked about different experiences or different things that you come across at winter ultras, different tips and kind of what works, different things that you should think about while you're out there. But we had a really cool event this year. We got dumped on with snow and it rained, which I guess is the theme of this winter.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But we had 47% female participation, and then 50% of our riders finished the course. It's just a 30-mile course, so it's not super long. And then there's like pretty basic kind of rustic cabins that everybody gets to sleep in. So if you don't have a bivvy, or if you don't want to sleep outside, you've got like a warm spot to kind of escape to and get out of the shelter. But it was a really fun event this year. Like, I was totally blown away by all of the positive attitudes despite the mushy conditions. Like, the first pack of finishers for that event finished in about 8.5 hours, wow, which is a long day. But we do a water boil midway through, and just kind of practice the skills that you would use at a winter ultra. We're going to continue doing it, working with the DNR and the Yankee Spring State, or the Long Lake Outdoor Recreation Center, Yankee Springs kind of area. But it was really fun, and it was really cool to see people sign up for it, and now they're all inspired to go do winter ultras. So I'm just excited to grow the field and get more people excited about doing those events.
Awesome. Yeah. And where can people find the info on that?
Wintershakedown.com.
Okay. Perfect.
There's also a Winter Shakedown Facebook page that you can follow as well.
Cool. All right, Jill. Well, anything else? What are you doing next? You're probably just resting and relaxing and eating.
Yeah, just eating every half hour, snacking all the time. ABS, always be snacking.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what's on the radar. I know for winter ultras, I'd love to go back to Fat Pursuit. And then I want to try to Sioux Sitting on 100, I think would be really fun. I love Alaska so much. Going back for the White Mountains would be rad. The bittersweet thing about winning the Iditarod is that you get an entry to the next year.
Right. So that's the draw.
That's the draw. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I am ready to do the 1,000-mile next year, especially with this whole virus thing. I think I'm going to have to save up some money for a minute.
Yeah, for sure.
But I would love to go back for the 350 again. Would be kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know. It took so much like mental prep for the 1,000-mile ITI that I didn't put a lot of stuff on my schedule for afterwards. I wanted to see how it went. But I had so much fun on the multi-night format that I want to do more like summer and fall bike packing races.
Sweet.
It would be cool.
Awesome. All right, Jill. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and I appreciate your knowledge and wisdom. It was awesome to hear about your experience, which it sounded like was just of epic proportions, and yeah, just thank you.
Thank you. It was super fun.